In this video, we're going to be talking about which vanilla to use, which chocolate to use, and also what flour would be best for your intended baked good. You guys have ever heard anybody say that baking is an exact science? People usually say that for a few different reasons. Most people, when they say that, are talking about that you need to be pretty careful that you have pretty exact measurements in baking, but also baking really is a science. It has a lot to do with the proteins and the fats and the sugars and how those all play together, and also it has to do with ratios. Your ratio from protein to fat and from liquid to solid and all that different stuff. And then there is chocolate. Typically for types of chocolate, the world is your pickle. You can use white chocolate or semi-sweet or milk chocolate or bittersweet chocolate. Anything you want to use, go for it. You can use it just interchangeably. If you're using 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate, you can use 1 cup of milk chocolate. Just whatever you would like. And then there is the conversation of regular chocolate versus cocoa powder. Real chocolate is going to have that butter in it, so it's going to have that fat, so it's going to make your baked goods a little bit moister. And then cocoa powder is, like the word implies, it's just a powder. I typically will use them both in a recipe. I'll use the regular chocolate to get that chocolatey flavor as well as some butter in there, some moistness, and then I'll use the cocoa powder in there to give it just a deeper, richer chocolate flavor. If you're gonna use a vanilla bean, 1 vanilla bean would be equal to about 2 1/4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then there is your vanilla bean paste, which I love. It's less expensive than a full vanilla bean, but it has a little bit of a stronger flavor than your typical vanilla extract. I love it. I think it's great. I use it all the time. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean paste is equal to 1 vanilla bean. Whichever you would like to use for that is all perfectly fine. There are a million different options for flour, and I would say that flour is what's going to change the taste of your, well, I shouldn't say taste. Flour is what's going to change the texture of your baked goods the most, I would say. When gluten forms in the flour, it's gonna make your... Hi guys, I really didn't like how I explained this before, so here we go again. So like I said before, that is true. In my opinion, the thing that's gonna change the texture and the taste the most in your baking is your flour. The big thing about flour is your gluten content. Gluten is that magical protein in flour that will develop and it will make your baked goods chewy and give it kind of that bread or dough-like texture. Obviously for things like cake, you're not really gonna want too much of that. And that's why in recipes for cake, for example, they're gonna say blend just until incorporated. Whereas in your bread, you're gonna say knead for 5 to 10 minutes depending on the bread. And that's because gluten needs to develop. You need to knead it to develop that gluten and those protein strands that are going to make your baked goods stick together and be chewy like your breads and your pretzels and things like that should. So all-purpose flour is what you're generally going to be using most of the time, and that has an 11.7% gluten content, and that is your basic amount that you would need. For things that you want to be a little bit chewier, like bread, you're going to use bread flour, which has a 12.7, I believe, gluten content. If I'm wrong, I'll put it in a little graphic next to me. But if you're making things, say like a cake or a cupcake, you may want to use something a little bit softer like cake flour, and I don't know off the top of my head what the gluten content is there, and like I said, I'll have that in a little graphic next to me. But then there are people that have either celiac disease, so they can't have any gluten, or they're trying to cut down on their gluten. So what you can do is you can use some gluten-free flour. Gluten is found in wheat. So anything that isn't a wheat flour, like your almond flour or coconut flour or anything like that, is not going to have any gluten in it. So you can use that. The only thing is that you can't substitute all-purpose flour with gluten for a gluten-free flour and expect the same result. They are not going to taste, they may taste similar, but they're not going to have the same texture at all. There's almost a gummy chewiness to gluten-free flour that's different. Gluten-free flour is kind of difficult to work with because it won't stick together because it doesn't have those proteins in there to make it all stick together. So what a lot of times what people will use is tapioca starch or xanthan gum to make the dough bind together better. I'm not totally up on how much you're supposed to put in there or anything like that, so you're gonna have to do a little bit more research to figure that out. And if I can find some sources for you guys, I will link those down in the description. And that is about it. Let me know down in the comments if I missed anything or if you have any other questions. I kind of felt like this was kind of all over the place, so I hope it made a little bit of sense. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but I'm also going to be leaving a link to my blog down in the description. I do have a blog post there that has all that information written down for you, so you can go and check that out. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like down below, and I will be back next week to make another delicious mess with you guys. So subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss that, and I will see you all next time.